morning, everyone. I think today has the possibility of being a very, very exciting day. But I also think that all of us have the responsibility to collectively create that excitement. So with that in mind, I'll try to start us off, and hopefully I'll start us off on the right track. You see in my hand an hourglass. And we all know that an hourglass represents time. If we apply that to your life, the sand in that hourglass can represent all of the time available in your life. And you can see that sand running out. And unfortunately, what that represents is your time began running out the day you were born. Time is your currency, and some of it's being used every day. Now, those of you here who are younger have potentially a fair amount of time left in your lives. But those of us who are older, I turned 60 this year, don't have much. And if that represents all I have, I'm not leaving this stage alive, I don't think. But given that idea of a limited amount of time has really caused me to reflect on the value of my own life and how I'm contributing in some way and using that time to contribute. Now, besides looking at this sand in the hourglass as representing time, we can also look at that sand as representing the flow of ideas that are going through our mind. And if we look at it that way, as a flow of ideas, we can kind of turn ourselves inside out and examine the ideas that are dominating our mind. For instance, when you look at your flow of ideas, is that a positive flow? Are you thinking positive thoughts, enabling thoughts that move you forward in your life? Or is it a negative flow? A negative flow where you're fairly cynical, focused on the ill things that other people say, dwelling on where you feel you've been cheated by somebody, or just reflecting negatively regularly on yourself or on others. A few years back, I coined a term, negathoughts. Negathoughts are thoughts that disable us because they're phrased negatively, and they're phrased in such a way as we give ourselves no options, no choices in a situation. For example, I'll never find a job in this economy. Or, I'm so deeply in debt, I don't know how I'll ever recover. You see, when we phrase things like that, we totally disempower ourselves. Now, let me go to something else. We get as a message as babies, as young children, a message that's very profound. And it's the same message that Pavlov learned in his experiment with dogs. Remember what Pavlov did? He'd take a dog and he'd provide it some food and he'd ring a bell. And after a number of repetitions, he removed the food. And he'd ring the bell, and what would happen? The dog would salivate. Well, we learned it was stimulus response. We learned that same stimulus response when we're babies. Think back to when you were a baby, if you can think back that far. You're hungry. What do? You cry. And what happens? Somebody comes and gives you a bottle. Then you poop your diaper. What do? You cry. And your mom or dad comes and changes your diaper. Then you start to get drowsy. So what do? You cry. And your mom or dad takes you over to the rocking chair, sings lullabies, and rocks you to sleep. By the time you're 3 years old, you have been rewarded thousands and thousands of times for whining. You've learned a very important lesson, a very impactful lesson. If you want anything, just whine, act like a victim, somebody will fix it for you. Now don't get me wrong. The thoughts that dominate our minds, the thoughts that have dominated your mind, have gotten you where you are today. They've also kept you where you are today. To the extent that your thoughts are debilitating, to the extent that you wanted other people to fix things for you, you've kept yourself from progressing. I think this conference today is a pivotal point. I think you're all here because you're looking for positive ideas and you're looking for a way to be involved in some kind of positive change. So, let me shift over now to the positive side. I'm going to talk about 3 different things that I'm actually working on in my own life as I reflect on the fact that there's limited time available in life that I'm working on for myself. And maybe you'll find some use in these things I'm going to suggest. The first thing, going back to those thoughts, challenge your thoughts. If you're feeling negative about somebody else, thinking about the negative or about a situation or somebody else, step back and ask yourself, is this really the most productive thing for me? Is this, given that I've got a limited amount of time, do I really want to be spending my time dwelling on this? Or can I shift to something much more positive? And rephrase your thoughts to give you power over the situation. For example, I really don't like the company where I work, but you know what? I've chosen to be here for the last 3 years, and I haven't chosen to look for a new job. You see, that word choice, just by putting that in there, is very, very powerful because you've given yourself power over the situation. You can change it now if you want. Second idea I want to present. Begin asking high-quality, thought-provoking questions. Now, what's a high-quality, thought-provoking question? Well, to get to that, let me give you a couple examples of what I see as low-quality questions. You just come home from work. You walk in the door, your spouse meets you and says, "So, you're home, eh?" I'll give you another one. When is somebody going to do something about this Michigan economy? I guarantee you, if you're the one who's asked that question, you aren't going to be doing anything about the Michigan economy. A high-quality, thought-provoking question, in my mind, is one that excites thinking, it motivates action, and it opens up a world of possibilities when asked. For example, how could we use the 6 degrees of separation to do more than get me Kevin Bacon's autograph? In what ways could we use the 6 degrees of separation to bring potable water to Africa? Or another question, how could all of us in this room today collaborate and generate unique ideas with a target of incubating 10 new businesses in Michigan within the next year? One final example. In what fundamental ways did the market crash open up the possibilities of being the person you've always wanted to become? So those are examples. So I've talked about challenge your thoughts, begin asking high-quality, thought-provoking questions. What we'll be doing there is generating ideas, but that's not enough. Because unless you take the next step of acting on your ideas, you're not going to create the positive momentum for yourself. I'd like to do a simple experiment. If you would, do exactly what I say. First of all, I'd like you to hold out your right hand. Try not to smack the person next to you. All right? Stick up your forefinger. I said forefinger. And again, what I want you to do is exactly what I say. I want you to bring your forefinger in, and I want you to touch the tip of your forefinger. Remember, do exactly what I say. I want you to touch the tip of your forefinger to your chin. Some of you did chin, some of you did cheek, didn't you? I use that example because the visual is very, very powerful. It's at least as powerful as what we hear. What we see is at least as powerful as what we hear, and sometimes more powerful. Your behaviors and actions, whether positive or negative, have an enormous impact on the people around you. But I know, and those actions are necessary to go forward. But I know that actions are scary because they involve risk. You see a picture of a roller coaster. Let me end this with a story. I grew up in Northwest Detroit. And when I was growing up, there used to be an amusement park in Northwest Detroit, Edgewater Park. It wasn't a big amusement park, maybe 25, 26 rides. But they had one wonderful ride, this beautiful, huge, old white wooden roller coaster, built in 1942. And the summer of my 14th year, my buddies and I could take the bus and get to Edgewater Park. And we went that summer a number of times. And everyone would go on all the rides, and everyone would go on the roller coaster. Well, everyone except me. Because I was deathly afraid of getting on that roller coaster. I desperately wanted to ride it, but I couldn't get myself to do it. So I'd stand down at the bottom of that first hill, and I'd watch the car snake their way up that first hill, and just come over that top and watch it shoot down. And when it would shoot down, the whole superstructure of that wooden roller coaster would just shake. And I'd be shaken with it. Again, desperately wanting to ride, but deathly afraid to do it. I was frozen. And I went through that whole summer of my 14th year that way. Went back to school, everyone teased me. The next summer I decided, I've got to go on this roller coaster. I'm significantly older now, I'm 15 years old. It's about time. So I said, the first time I go to Edgewater Park, I'm going on the roller coaster. So I get there, I'm with the absolute worst person I could ever be with. A friend of mine by the name of Bob Gallagher. Bob was the kind of guy who, when you'd go on the Ferris wheel, would start rocking the seat. And he'd see my hands start going like that because he knew I was scared. And so what would he do? He'd rock it more. Gary, let's see if we can really get this thing going. Well, so Bob and I are in the queue for the roller coaster. We finally get up into the superstructure. We're almost up to the front, ready to get out of the car. And Bob nudges me. Gary, look over there. Over on the wall is a sign. Insurance regulations. Riders, ride at your own risk. Bob says, that wasn't there last year. He says, I heard at the end of the season there was some kind of terrible accident. Well, if there were a gate right here, an exit gate, I can tell you I would have been through that in a second. But I can't, there's none there. I've got to go back through the queue and see some of my friends, so I'm stuck. So it's our turn to get on. Bob runs right up to the first seat of the first car. So now my first time I'm in the first seat of the first car. And the roller coaster starts going. Well, today, if you go on a roller coaster, they put a seat belt on you and they bring the bar down and test to make sure it's locked. They did not do that at Edgewater Park in the 1960s. There was no seat belt, and the bar didn't come down until you were going up the hill. So we're going up the hill, I pull it on the bar. People behind me, their bars start going down. Mine's not going down yet. Bob's just like this. He's having a ball. He doesn't care. Well, eventually the bar comes down. Then I see, of course, the tips of the trees, and that doesn't help things. And then we come over the precipice, and I see the rails. And those of you who've been in the first seat of the first car know what that looks like when you see the rails of that first hill. And I say, what did I get into? And before you know it, whoosh, we're down that first hill, up the second, down the second. And by that second hill, I was sold. I was sold. Feeling the wind in my hair, the butterflies in my stomach, the exhilaration of riding it. Now I tell that story because if I hadn't crossed that threshold, if I hadn't got on that roller coaster, I never would have experienced it. I never would have had the experience. Today, this TED conference today can serve as a catalyst for us. I believe we're going to hear a number of great ideas. I would ask you to do two things. Suspend judgment and ask high-quality, thought-provoking questions to expand on the ideas that come today, and also see if you can't find ways to take action as a result of some of the ideas. The theme of this conference is Positive Ideas for the World from Detroit. The world needs us. It's time for us to cross that threshold and get on that roller coaster. This is our moment. Today, this is our day. This is our time. And I think my time's up. Thank you. Thank you, Charlie. Awesome.